Picture this. A loving couple opens their home to a young orphan girl. Sweet-faced and well-mannered, she seems like the perfect addition to their family. But as days turn into weeks, disturbing incidents begin to pile up. The child's behaviour becomes increasingly erratic. Her stories don't quite add up, and her past is shrouded in mystery. Soon the parents make a chilling discovery. The little girl that they welcomed into their home might not be a child at all. Hi folks, I'm Johnny and welcome to The Oddest. So, if all of this sounds eerily familiar, you're probably thinking of the 2009 psychological thriller called Orphan. The film follows the Coleman family as they adopt Esther, a 9-year-old Russian girl with a dark secret. As the movie unfolds, we learn that Esther is actually a 33-year-old woman with a rare hormonal disorder, masquerading as a child to infiltrate and destroy families. That's a terrifying premise for a horror movie, right? Something that could only exist in Hollywood's twisted imagination, right? Except in 2010, just 1 year after Orphan hit theatres, Michael and Christine Barnett adopted a 6-year-old girl named Natalia Grace from the Ukraine. Like Esther, Natalia was small-statured and had a thick accent. Like Esther, she came with limited documentation about her past. And like Esther, well, that's where the story begins. Because what happened next would make even the writers of Orphan question whether they were writing fiction or predicting one of the most bizarre cases in adoption history. The question that haunted the Barnetts and now haunts us remains: was Natalia Grace really a child? Or was she, as they claimed, an adult woman with dwarfism, playing a role that blurred the lines between Hollywood fiction and shocking reality? The truth, as you're about to discover, is stranger than any horror movie could imagine.
Now, a bizarre story unlike any other. A family thought they were adopting a 6-year-old girl from Ukraine, but was she really a child? The family claims she was actually an adult who made their life a living hell.
Is this an evil orphan or a little girl left all alone?
She was an adult. You could just tell.
On top of that, the child's adoptive father tells our Stephen Fabian she threatened to kill his family.
She attempted to kill Christine twice.
Though Orphan is a fictional movie, it shocked everyone when a real-life case emerged with an eerie similarity. An Eastern European girl with dwarfism, Natalia Grace, was adopted, and her family later claimed that she was actually an adult attempting to harm them. Natalia insists that she's just a child, but who's telling the truth? The person at the heart of this story is Natalia Grace Barnett. According to her birth certificate, orphanage records and her birth mother, Natalia was born on September 4th of 2003 in the southern Ukrainian town of Mykolaiv to Anna Vladimirovna and Vadim Gava. Natalia Grace was born with a rare form of dwarfism called spondylodiphysia dysplasia congenita. On October 3rd of 2003, her parents, unable to afford the complex medical care and surgeries that she would require, well, they placed her in an orphanage in the Ukraine. In 2008, when Natalia Grace was about 4.5 years old, she was adopted by Gary and Diane Ciccone in New Hampshire and brought across to the United States. However, in April 2010, for reasons that remain unclear, the Ciccones returned her to a US orphanage. Soon after that, 6-year-old Natalia was adopted by Christine and Michael Barnett from Indiana, a decision that would dramatically alter her life. The Barnett family adopted Natalia Grace with the hope of giving love to a child they believed might otherwise never experience it. At that time, the Barnetts were well known in the autism community, largely because of their son Jacob, a young physics prodigy. Christine Barnett wrote a book detailing her journey raising her brilliant son and even started a foundation in Indiana to offer sports programs for children with autism. By age 10, young Jacob was already in graduate school, making significant contributions to theoretical physics.
Instead of mourning her son's diagnosis of autism, Christine Barnett fostered his passions and interests. How did she tap into Jacob's potential? Well, let's find out. Here's Christine Barnett, the author of Spark, a mother's story of nurturing genius, and her son, Jacob Barnett. student of theoretical physics at the Perimeter Institute in Waterloo, Ontario.
Meanwhile, Michael Barnett was a businessman with a background in real estate. With such an accomplished and compassionate family, it seemed like an ideal environment for Natalia, a place where her unique needs as a disabled child could be fully understood and supported. In May of 2010, the Barnetts adopted Natalia. According to Michael Barnett, the family got a call from a Florida adoption agency giving them just 24 hours to decide whether to adopt Natalia or she would subsequently be placed in state care. The couple decided to proceed straight away with the adoption, and just 24 hours after that initial phone call, Natalia Grace officially became Natalia Grace Barnett. To celebrate, the Barnetts took the entire family on a trip to Disney World. But that very night, they say that they noticed something suspicious about their new daughter. The Barnetts claim that Christine noticed Natalia had full pubic hair, even though she was only supposed to be about 6.5 years old. Rather than contacting the adoption agency to discuss this surprising sign of puberty in such a young child, they decided to bring her home with the family. Between 2010 and 2012, Christine and Michael Barnett grew convinced that Natalia was mentally unstable, dangerous, and intent on harming them. They accused her of various disturbing behaviours, including hiding her menstrual cycle from them, pouring cleaning chemicals into Christine's coffee and leaping out of moving cars, hoarding knives under her bed, and even standing over them at night with a butcher's knife in her hand, allegedly threatening to take their lives. The Barnetts also claimed that Natalia deliberately threw their son's toys and homework out of the car on the highway, supposedly trying to lure them into traffic and get hit by a car. However, it's important to note that none of the three sons were ever harmed in this way, and no such incidents were ever reported. The accusations against Natalia kept piling up. Christine and Michael claimed that she openly admitted to trying to kill them, and allegedly told them that she had been diagnosed as a psychopath, a sociopath, and a schizophrenic.
And she just says, "Look."
I was putting her into the bathtub, and I noticed that she had full pubic hair.
She would put thumbtacks face up on our stairs, so when we would walk up and down stairs, we would be stepping on thumbtacks. We would find knives under her bed. There was a moment when I woke up in the middle of the night and Natalia was standing over my bed with a knife in her hand, very blank look on her face. She began to attempt to harm my sons in a very serious manner. As they would be crossing a street, Natalia had already found something that meant something very important to each of my boys. My youngest son, who was 6, was into cows, so she found his favorite cow toy. My 9-year-old son liked cars, so she found his favorite car toys. And my 11-year-old son was attending university, so she had gotten his homework out of his backpack. As they would be crossing a very, very busy street, she would make sure that the boys were paying attention, and she would launch everything up into the air, into traffic, and they would instantly run into traffic to try to retrieve their items.
Frightening.
Immediately thereafter, Natalia would simply tell us very coldly and very directly, "I'm trying to kill the boys."
After an incident where they say Natalia attempted to push or drag Christine into an electric fence, they felt compelled to place her in several inpatient mental health centres, citing concerns over her violent and homicidal behaviour. While Natalia was at these mental health centres, it was claimed that she told staff she wasn't actually a child at all, and even tried to solicit sex from adult male patients. Eventually it was concluded that she didn't understand or speak any Ukrainian, leading them to believe that she was, in fact, just an adult pretending to be a child, just like the plot of the movie Orphan. Does that striking similarity just seem a little too coincidental? It's important to note that during the 2 years in which all of these allegations were said to occur, the Barnetts never reported to authorities that their daughter was an adult pretending to be a child, never pressed charges against Natalia for any of these multiple murder attempts, never contacted the actual adoption agency, or tried to pursue litigation against them for fraud. They never sought to have Natalia Grace, who they claim was a legal adult, deported back to the Ukraine for falsifying her identity as a minor. They never sought medical testing, such as having an estradiol test or a progesterone hormone profile assessment done to confirm their daughter did actually have a menstrual cycle. It seemed like there were a bunch of things that could have been done at that time to prove that she was in fact an adult, but in hindsight none of it was done. Michael and Christine Barnett did have Natalia assessed by several doctors in an attempt to determine her true age. There's also the possibility that the adoption agency may have misrepresented Natalia's age just to make her seem more appealing to prospective adoptive parents. Unfortunately, younger children are more likely to be adopted than older ones, so some adoption agencies may lower a child's age to increase their chances of being chosen. However, doctors who examined Natalia in 2010, 2011 and then in 2012, well, they concluded that she was between 8 and 11 years old. But what unfolded next seemed like it could have been pulled straight from a much darker Hollywood script. Back in 2012, the Barnetts asked the Marion County Superior Court to officially change Natalia Grace's birth year from 2003 to 1989. They filed that request as something called ex parte petition, which means one of the parties involved in this case didn't get the chance to participate in the legal process. This decision meant that 8-year-old Natalia Grace was left out of the entire legal process that changed her age from 8 years old to 22. The Barnetts argued that adjusting her age would allow her to qualify for state services that she otherwise wouldn't have access to as a child, like affordable health insurance, food stamps and disability benefits. They even went as far as renting her a wee apartment somewhere and paying 3 months rent up front.
I just know that I had got out of the hospital and she got me an apartment.
Christine and her go out the next day and they find her an apartment in Westfield.
Westfield, Indiana is in Hamilton County, Indiana. Hamilton County, Indiana is the richest part of the state. A single floor apartment complex. She's got a living room, she's got a dining room, she's got a little eating kitchen, she's got a bathroom, and she's got a bedroom.
Well, that's good of them, isn't it?
After a year of living on her own, that's when my son got an offer to attend university in Canada. He was at the time 14 years old, going on 15. There was no way he was going to be able to do that on his own. She was going to the grocery store, she was hanging up things in her apartment. She was capable of living on her own. When she was discharged from hospital the final time in 2012, she had stated in her discharge papers she did not wish to have contact with us at all anymore.
And then, leaving their child, who had only recently been recognised as 8, to live on her own. Although Natalia Grace was now registered for Social Security and disability benefits as a legal adult, she couldn't actually pick up any checks. She also couldn't even drive to go and get groceries or supplies, and being a little person, her apartment wasn't at all built specifically for her needs. Reportedly, she even needed help with basic tasks like doing her laundry. Well, because she couldn't reach the washing machine or the dryer in the building. Since Natalia was now considered a legal adult, Child Services was no longer able to step in and check on her well-being, provide medical care or intervene in her situation. When she first came to the Barnetts, Natalia had shared a detailed list and timeline of surgeries that she would need throughout her life. But now that she was legally an adult, the Barnetts weren't obliged to continue with any medical treatments that could have improved her quality of life. Investigation Discovery created a documentary titled The Curious Case of Natalia Grace. In it, they spoke with Natalia's neighbours, who shared their experiences and interactions with her. Neighbours recalled that Natalia would introduce herself as being 22 or 23 years old, since that's how everyone had told her to identify. However, many also mentioned that she appeared unkempt, often wearing the same clothes for days and even weeks. She had a strong odour and seemed to lack basic personal hygiene. Natalia would often show up at her neighbours' homes uninvited, sometimes entering their houses without permission, and she would call on them repeatedly. Anyone who spent time with her could tell that if she were truly 22 or 23 years old like she had claimed, well, she struggled with basic social skills. She had no sense of boundaries, and she couldn't manage even the simplest personal hygiene practices. Even though she was considered an adult, it was clear that Natalia couldn't care for herself or live independently due to her disability. Michael would sometimes bring groceries to her, but neighbours said that Natalia often showed up at their doors looking for some food, or would even enter their homes uninvited to just help herself to whatever was available.
Christine was crying. She was very upset, saying that Natalia wasn't who they thought she was. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, knives. She had knives in her room. The boys were like, yeah, this is really happening, yeah.
In this documentary, there's a cell phone footage provided by Michael Barnett where he's seen speaking with Natalia about not communicating with a child service agent who had investigated the Barnetts before Natalia's age had been changed. In the video, Michael tells Natalia that he had deleted the agent's phone number so she couldn't contact her. He then instructs her to stop talking to the agent and insists that the agent couldn't do anything because Natalia is now an adult. It's important to note here that there was a noticeable shift in the way Natalia dressed before and after her age was legally changed. In photos taken before the re-aging, she wore age-appropriate children's clothes, but afterwards the pictures show her dressing in more basic adult-like outfits. Some people felt that this change in her clothing was an effort by the Barnetts to make Natalia appear actually older than she really was. After a whole year of living alone in that apartment, Natalia's landlord had to go and tell the Barnetts that she couldn't rent or live there anymore. This forced the Barnetts to move her to another apartment so she could continue living on her own. Instead of finding a place in the same county where they had lived before, well, before they moved to Canada that is, well, they decided to relocate her to Tippecanoe County in Lafayette, Indiana, about an hour away from Hamilton County in Westfield. It's believed that the Barnetts moved Natalia an hour away from where they lived so that nobody would recognise her or the family. Once she was settled into this new apartment, the Barnetts moved to Canada so that Jacob could pursue his PhD at the Perimeter Institute for Advanced Studies in Ontario. After relocating in 2013, the Barnetts completely cut off all contact with Natalia Grace. After being left behind in Lafayette, Natalia crossed paths with Antoine and Cynthia Mann. They first noticed her because, well, she seemed to be struggling on her own and clearly needed help. The Manns decided to step in, inviting Natalia Grace to join their family alongside their other adopted children. Since 2013, they've been caring for and raising her as one of their own. The Manns would then accuse Michael and Christine Barnett of child abandonment after they moved to Canada and left Natalia behind. Although Natalia was legally classified as an adult, the Barnetts were arrested and charged with neglecting a dependent. Following their arrest, the Barnetts took their story to the media. Of course they did. Of course they did. They appeared on interviews and on TV shows, maintaining their innocence. They claim Natalia was not a child, but a dangerous adult who faked her identity to manipulate others for sympathy. Despite evidence suggesting that Natalia had been neglected by her legal guardians, whether as a child or a disabled adult, Michael Barnett was ultimately found not guilty. As for Catherine, well, the charges against her were dismissed before her case even went to trial. In 2022, her biological mother from Ukraine, Anna Gava, was found and provided key documents including Natalia's birth records, a DNA test, and Anna's own birth records, which showed she was born in 1979. So, if Natalia were actually born in 1989, as the Barnetts claimed, then that would mean that her birth mother gave birth to her when she was 10 years old. While stories occasionally surface, of course, about very young children becoming parents, the idea that Anna had a child at such a young age is just as unbelievable as it sounds. According to Natalia's actual birth records, she was born in 2003, meaning the Barnetts left her to fend for herself as a minor, and yet they faced no real consequences for their actions. In the ID documentary, some neighbours and staff from the mental health facility where Natalia spent 9 weeks, they shared negative accounts of her, even violating HIPAA by speaking out. However, others featured in the documentary offered a very different perspective on what happened in this case. Christine Barnett claimed that Natalia tried to push and drag her into an electric fence at a dairy farm, which reportedly led to Natalia's placement in a psychiatric facility. However, the farm staff there later clarified that the fence wasn't even electrified, and that Natalia showed no signs of aggression or distress when first responders arrived. In fact, witnesses claimed it was Christine who appeared to be upset, aggressive, and overly dramatic during this entire incident. The whole situation seems absurd when you consider that Natalia is significantly smaller and lighter than Christine. She has physical disabilities, including 2 clubbed feet that make even walking difficult, and also she has dwarfism. The idea that Natalia could have physically overpowered Christine and tried to push or drag her into an electric fence with murderous intent. Come on! The only evidence the Barnetts have presented to support their claims is a report from one single doctor who stated that Natalia was an adult because her bones had stopped growing, a characteristic typically seen in adults. However, Natalia clearly has a rare form of dwarfism, and regardless of her age, her bone structure and growth patterns are going to be different from both children her age and adults.
DNA test results finally confirmed the true age of little Natalia Grace, who's been at the center of a bizarre controversy that's riveted America for years.
Hi, Natalia. Hi.
In 2010, Natalia was adopted by a family from Indiana who was told that she was a 7-year-old Ukrainian orphan. But her adopted parents, Michael and Christine Barnett, claimed they discovered she was really an adult with dwarfism and that she was just posing as a child. Barnett told Inside Edition in 2019 that she was a violent sociopath.
She's got a monthly cycle, and she's hiding it. She had spent every waking day attempting to ruin everybody else's life in the house. She's threatening to kill us. She's trying to kill us.
Their story made headlines when the Barnetts petitioned a court to legally change her age to 22, left her in an apartment, and fled to Canada. They were charged with neglect of a dependent, but were fully exonerated. This is Natalia today in a new documentary series, The Curious Case of Natalia Grace, Natalia Speaks, streaming on Discovery Plus and Max.
I want you to know how old I am.
In the docuseries, Natalia takes a DNA test to try to prove once and for all how old she is.
Want to take a look at the results?
Yes.
Natalia holds hands with her new adoptive father, and here are the bombshell results. A DNA test shows she is currently 22 years old, which means she was indeed a child of 9, not an adult, when she was adopted in 2010.
In the end, perhaps the most disturbing part of Natalia Grace's story isn't the question about her age, but how quickly society was willing to believe the worst about a vulnerable child with disabilities. We were so caught up in the sensational parallels to a horror movie that we forgot about the real horror. A young girl, far from her homeland, passed from family to family and ultimately left to fend for herself. Whether Natalia was 8 or 22 when the Barnetts abandoned her, one truth remains undeniable. She was a person who needed help, support, and most importantly, love. Maybe that's the real lesson here, that sometimes the monsters aren't hiding in orphanages or under beds. They're in the assumptions that we make and the ways we fail those who need us most. So, that's the story of Natalia Grace. What's your thoughts on this? Please let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, stay safe out there please. Tell someone that you love them. And above all else, remember, keep smiling.